Hey everybody, Dustin DePirac here, back again at Bart Kaufman Field, back in the old radio booth. Indiana, really big win today in the second day of the NCAA Regional. They beat Stanford 4-2, put themselves really in the best possible position, in the most sort of coveted position you can sort of be in this tournament, having won their first two games. They don't have to play again until tomorrow at 6. Stanford has to play again, has to go up against Youngstown State in an elimination game tomorrow at 1. So really important win for them. Obviously, you saw Stanford. I mean, they might have a 31-24 record, and they might have just barely gotten in this tournament, but they did not play like that. They haven't played like that this entire weekend. Certainly seemed like a team that's really kind of figured it out. Had some young kids that have really put it together, especially in the pitching staff. Cal Quantrill yesterday, John Hochstadter today made it a lot more difficult, certainly than Youngstown State did, for Indiana to get much of anything going offensively. But of course, that was why Indiana was so excited about having Joey Donato for this game. Donato pitched sort of your standard Joey Donato outing. It wasn't his best ever, but it was solid. Obviously, just the standard thing you couldn't sort of expect from Donato. Located his fastball pretty well, got his changeup really going as an out pitch. The slider, sometimes it was working, sometimes it wasn't, but it was good enough really to get him by. He strikes out 4, gives up 2 runs, 6 hits. Really, the only guy that had him, just had a beat on him all day, was Austin Slater, the Stanford center fielder, who's a top 200 baseball All-America guy, going to be a draft pick next week for sure. Homered off of him and had a big RBI double in the first, but that was really the only guy who really got good contact on him. As usual, I mean, he kept the ball low, just made it difficult for anybody to really doing anything. I think, I want to say Stanford had, I think, one. Other than the first inning, he gave up a single to Blandino and a double to Austin Slater. But after that, he only once had 2 guys on base in an inning, and that was, I want to say it was in the 4th. Dustin Booth had an error, was becoming a rare error. He's become much better with the glove on third base than he was a year ago, when he had, I think, the most errors on the team. But he kind of just booted one, and then got twisted up a little bit on a chopper, threw, was about to had a really nice throw, but it was just a little bit off, and they got 2 guys on that way, just on ground balls that were inside the infield. But that was the only other time, other than the first, that Donato put 2 guys on in an inning. So again, just sort of standard work from him that really kept Indiana in good position. And they got some just big time at bats, some just sort of scrap and claw, no surrender type of at bats. Got a run in the first on a double by Schwarber. Probably made Indiana fans think, oh, this might actually be easy, but it really wasn't after that. Rodriguez had walked and Schwarber doubled down the line, but after that, Hochstadter gets the next 3 guys. In the third, Sam Travis had an outstanding at bat. After Nick Ramos had a double, he was still on second base with 2 outs. I think it was 2 outs. Yeah. Anyway, Sam Travis just really fought off a lot of pitches. He was 1-2 and had 4 2-strike foul balls to keep that at bat alive, even at 1-2. Just a bunch of things that Hochstadter was trying to do just to bury him, and he just managed to just foul it off. Hit a bunch of breaking pitches to do that, just getting a piece of it. Finally lines a single to center, brings in Ramos, makes it 2-1. That was really a critical juncture in the game right there to start. A couple innings later, he hits pretty much just a moonshot, just a solo shot over the center field wall. 2-0 fastball, just left it elevated. Hochstadter left it elevated. Travis just more or less clobbered it. Later, Slater had a home run off of Donato. After that, cut it to 3-2. Indiana was another big position where they really needed a hit. Had a couple guys on first and second for Will Nolden. Another kid who doesn't maybe get as much respect as he deserves. All Big Ten third-team kid. But they call him Big Game Bill Nolden. He's just in critical occasions in the past. He's had at bats like this where he just fights it off. Just manages to somehow spray a single out to someplace. In this case, had a 3-2 count. Had also fallen behind 1-2, much like Sam Travis had. Just kept fouling off breaking pitches from Chris Castellanos, a Stanford reliever. Finally got a fastball that he could rip up the middle, and he did. Since it was a 3-2 count and 2 outs, runners were going. Nick Ramos scores easily, makes it 4-2, puts Indiana in a really good position at that point. Donato comes out in the 8th. Had already pitched 7, was starting to wear down a little bit, gave up a double to Tommy Edman, but came up with a huge strikeout after that. Once he got that one, they pulled him for Jake Kelzer, who struck out Blandino with just a nasty slider that he got on. They got to just hit the black. Blandino just kind of froze on it, and they managed to get out of that inning, stranding Edman at second. Then Kelzer again got 2 outs, gave up a ground rule double, but then got a big ground out to end it. A couple of big performances there just late in the game. Again, Donato coming up with this huge strikeout strikeout that he had to have, and Jay Kelser stepped in a really big situation for a redshirt freshman kid who hasn't had a lot of those situations where he's kind of really been in a bind or really just had a very small margin for error. But this one he did. This one he absolutely had to make some big pitches. Didn't have a lot of room. Could not have just given up the moon ball. And not that he hasn't. He hasn't given up a run in a long time. But a lot of occasions, even when he's been in kind of pressure spots, hasn't been for long. Hasn't necessarily had to get that 4-out save. With it still close. On a lot of occasions, he's come in maybe, I think it was the Louisville game, he had maybe a 1-run lead against Louisville out there, and Indiana came out the next inning and scored 5 runs. It was the one where Schwarber hit the ball over the batter's eye. So he wasn't necessarily under the same pressure. He had to pitch, I think, 1 pitch to get out of the 8th. After that, he was done with a huge lead. So hasn't necessarily been in one of these spots before, and this one was absolutely critical. Got through with that one. So Indiana just in a great spot because of that. Obviously, they not only saved the NATO in the first game on Friday, but they also saved Christian Morris, who has been almost as good as the NATO. Maybe not quite, doesn't have necessarily the career track record, certainly, because he's only really been starting this year, but has been pretty phenomenal. I want to say he's 6-2 with an ERA around 1.88. Came through with, I think 7-inning, 1-hit outing against, who was it? Iowa? No. Forgetting already. Michigan. That was the big one. Against that that pitcher's duel with Brett Adcock in the Big Ten tournament. So he's coming off of that. Has really been dealing lately, and he gets to go tomorrow night. Stanford has to dig a little bit deeper to decide who they're going to go with. It's not necessarily an obvious choice. So they've obviously first got to beat Youngstown State, which scrapped and clawed, kept alive, won its first ever NCAA tournament game, beating Indiana State today. So they're obviously a little bit fired up. They're not going to necessarily go down easy. Certainly, you can tell that there's a pretty significant talent gap between Indiana and Stanford and Youngstown State. Probably, almost definitely, Stanford wins that game, but they at least have to go through some pitching to do it. And, they're going to have to dig deep. They're going to have to go into their 4th starter this weekend. Indiana will be fresh, with its number 2 guy. They have every possible advantage. Certainly it's not going to be easy as, Stanford's going, got some hitters, regardless of who's pitching against them, they're not going to be easy to get out. But Indiana just puts himself in really good position. And means a lot, obviously, because a lot of other national seeds did not put themselves in good position today. Florida State and Florida both went 0-2 in their regionals, the number 2 and number 5 overall seeds in this tournament. So Indiana, is one of a bunch of teams that are kind of sitting pretty at this point. Have put themselves in a great spot. Against what is apparently going to be a little bit tougher regional overall, maybe than they had last year. So in a good situation with good pitching prospects. IU's got a really good shot. They play at 6 o'clock tomorrow. They have to lose twice to not go to the Super Regional. So help themselves out in a lot of ways tonight. All right, thanks guys.